if you treated your career like your health, conducting regular checkups before symptoms get serious? Welcome to the Marketing Moms Podcast. I'm Kelly Callahan Poe, and today's episode is called Regular Career Checkups for a Healthy Career with Wes Ehnert. Wes is the founder and principal coach at Vertical Path Coaching and Consulting, where he helps people and teams live and work with intention. With a background in high-performing sales leadership and executive coaching, Wes brings behavioral science and emotional intelligence to his work with mission-driven organizations, helping professionals unlock clarity, confidence, and real results. Thanks for joining me today, Wes.
Well, thank you, Kelly. That guy sounds interesting. I can meet him myself.
He is interesting, and the interesting part was a connection point. Now, you and I know each other from our advertising days way back when. The world has changed a lot since then. But when I had a chance to review your podcast, I found something, a little nugget of a commonality that we have, and that commonality is that we are both Rush fans.
Yes, and I was knocked off my proverbial horse. Not that there's not grown women Rush fans these days. It's just that we've known each other for so long, and that never leaked out.
Well, we're gonna leak it today because it's fun. And so, my question to you is: what is your favorite Rush lyric or lyrics, and why?
Well. Let me just preface that by saying it's difficult for me because, for the obvious reason, there's this brilliant lyricist with so many, great, deep lyrics. And I also am a person who doesn't initially pay attention to lyrics. I usually discover them much later after I've been mouthing them for years. I'll say, oh, that's what they're saying. But mine right now, top of head, top of mind, and you and I actually already pointed to it, is the one in Free Will, because I get to use that often, and because I love the idea of personal agency. And so Free Will has that quote, if you choose not to decide, you've still made a choice, which is in a way, going to kind of maybe be a preface for our topic, which is if you choose not to take a look at your career, it's going to happen anyway. It's not going to wait for you to take a look at it. Same thing with free will. Choose, don't choose, either way. Or choose purposefully or choose not to choose. Either way, you just made a choice. So I do love that lyric.
Excellent choice. Mine is a little longer, so forgive me. But my favorite Rush lyric is from the song Closer to the Heart. Ooh. And it goes like this. And the men who hold high places must be the ones who start to mold a new reality closer to the heart. The blacksmith and the artist reflect it in their art. They forge their creativity closer to the heart. Philosophers and plowmen each must know his part to sow a new reality closer to the heart. So these lyrics aren't just poetry to me, they're a manifesto in a world increasingly divided by and driven by non-human intelligence, divided by political factions. Rush wrote the antidote back in 1977 that real change starts at the top, but is built by everyday people who take pride in their work. So there you go. I'm one of the very few and proud women waxing poetic about the Canadian band Rush. So.
Yes, I love it. That was a great one. And I've known that song since I was a child, but I didn't apply it to today. And it's so necessary today. It's perfect for today. So yeah, that was really
all
good.
right. I wore my rock shirt as well.
Yes, I wore a blank slate. That's what I'm coming with.
All right. Well, let's start with the idea about getting a regular career checkup, because I love the idea when you and I chatted about you go to the doctor on a regular basis for your body, but you don't necessarily do that for your career. So talk to me about what a regular career checkup entails.
Well, we could think practically, technically, and we could say that anytime you decide to stop in your tracks, because of course we're all going about life, right? I'll say this quote now because if I don't, it's definitely coming, and it's not a Rush quote, but it's John Lennon who said, "Life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans." And I love that lyric because it's just such a basic truth that while we're just hustling and bustling and being so busy and being so consumed by the flow and the momentum of our life is happening.
Yeah.
So later you'll look back in the rearview mirror at your career in retrospect and you'll see that, oh, it's been playing out just because I didn't stop to be intentional. It's been playing out. So at a very simple, like I said, practical level, you can stop, take a look at your documents, your resume, your LinkedIn profile, your how you're speaking about yourself in public settings, networking moments, and just take a snapshot of where are you right now exactly as far as you're concerned, and what about the materials that represent you? How are they representing you right now? I'd say that's more practical. I'm going to point to something deeper, more which will lead you to more profound ways of doing an assessment like this, a checkup. And that is to remember, this is a model that I use, and it has you take a look at your life from the core. You, the core identity at the center, playing roles on the periphery, right? You're a mom, maybe you're a friend, a daughter, a boss, an entrepreneur, a club member. You're all these roles. You do these things, but you are the core identity at the center of that. And that means that you mentally hold this picture of your career and how you're actually functioning in your career. And if we don't disrupt those ideas, we may not even realize exactly how our career is happening. So let's just say we have a role as the job we're in, and maybe we're headed for some promotion. That's just a tiny sliver of where your core identity is at, what you may want for your entire actualization of your professional self, right? This may only be scratching at some of the things you may want and care about. But if we don't have a stop at the career doctor office to say, how let me check my vitals, we're not going to have agency, right? We're going to keep just being on autopilot and floating on through, or as I made the pinball reference, you'll just be bouncing around.
So the basics are your resume, your LinkedIn, your cover letter, your posts, your website, your portfolio, any training and certifications that you've received that might be relevant to demonstrate that you are savvy in AI, for example. What are the things that are hot right now? What other types of things do you need to update? And for me, as a marketer, I would be looking at branding. How are you branding yourself as an executive? Because
Yeah.
branding is important. Does it all look and feel the same way? Is the tonality the same? Do you talk about yourself in the same way? Do you have the same catchphrases? Those sort of things.
Yeah, the way I like to frame this with new clients, I work mostly with career clients, mostly in transition, which tends to lend itself to this kind of conversation, right? It's a pit stop in their career, it's a break, it's an opportunity. And I talk with them about becoming aware of their brand, as you just said. So we'll promote a brand, and maybe we'll have to blur that out. I don't know, but your brand, as I see it, maybe this is how you would see it too. It's that quick take, right? This is why I can take this one over the next bottle of water just based on brand, which means I know something by just what I'm saying. So I talk with them about their brand, the value proposition, which is the nuts and bolts behind this brand. What makes me pick this brand? What do I know about it because of these labels and such? And then the messaging, the words, the images. So I have to be aware of all three phases: the brand, that quick take, the value proposition, the nuts and bolts, and the messaging, the words. I have to be aware of all of those things if I'm going to be intentional about them, and if I'm going to be, to what you pointed to, is consistent about them.
Yeah.
Because if I'm not consistent, then I don't really have the brand I think I do, right? Because somebody may perceive me in this place as one thing and that place is another. A typical version of that is you're somebody in your career that someone would meet, and that would be their take. They would take in your brand and so forth. When they go on LinkedIn, do they have the same experience? Does it all line up? When they read your resume, does that all line up too? And when you show up outside of work, does your brand continue, or is it gone? Or do we get another facet? So looking at all this and making sure it's consistent. And to your point, it isn't just your resume and your LinkedIn profile, but we got to start there, right? Your basic portfolio. Maybe you have a website that represents you. You start with the basics. And then I like to move more towards the internal, where we get to that more complex view. What's happening from your center point and how you're operating this complex self with all these roles. So what are you being intentional about and what are you not being intentional about?
So obviously we all have perceptions of what it is that we think our brand represents, but it's also important to almost do like a mini 360 from your trusted colleagues, friends, and customers to confirm, is the value proposition that you're putting out there and the materials that you're putting out there, do they match what you think they do, or do they need to be addressed, correct?
Correct. You're essentially having a gap analysis between what you think you're putting out there and what others say you're putting out there, which is so important for that layer of objectivity, which is a lot to ask of self, by the way. There are a lot of people who feel like, well, I know how people think about me, but there's nothing like getting a 360 and hearing people anonymously tell you, or even not anonymously. There's an exercise out there called Real Best Self. And all it really amounts to is you plug into this program and you end up sending 10 emails to 10 contacts that have known you throughout your life in various professional, non-professional settings. And you ask them to tell you when they've seen you at your best. So this is a real positive one. It's really hard to go through that exercise and not discover new things about yourself and realize that you may not be talking about your own brand.
So a lot of this is obviously outside your annual review because that's only a piece of the pie. So you really have to create your own goals and make them measurable. So can you give some examples of what are the goals that you might create short-term, long-term, making sure that you're on target? How often are you adjusting those and are you looking at those? Are those the sort of things that you need to do during this annual review?
Yeah, I don't mean any of these things to be too hard and fixed because I think it's up to each individual. I also don't want to be too philosophical or esoteric about them that they're hard to grasp. So it's finding what's right for you. So that's why, if you notice in that podcast episode, I mentioned maybe this means a quarterly review for a certain person who's doing a lot of changing and managing a delicate brand or a complex brand. Or maybe it's just an annual review. Let me check in with myself the same way you do in a corporate world. They want to have a performance review. It's their version of the check-in. No replacement for the self-check-in. Self-check-in is where you get honest with yourself. This isn't about how I'm performing for others. It's how I'm performing for myself. How am I showing up? Am I showing up the way I intend and want to show up? But the cadence can be whatever makes sense to a person. And I like to work with clients to build a framework that they would see as something they can stick with and would be valuable. So you build from the ground up and make sure it's something that has the right amount of depth for them, right amount of critical reflection, right cadence or frequency, because everybody's a little different and will want to manage that differently.
Well, let me throw out some things that might be in that framework. So job satisfaction. What areas do I need to improve on? That's a big one, right?
Yeah. Within a larger context of career satisfaction, right? So you can measure the universe of your job. How satisfied am I with this job on a scale of 1 to 10? And am I here right now because I'm so satisfied and fulfilled? Or am I here right now because it would be really uncomfortable to disrupt what I'm doing? Yeah. And that's just the job. That's not asking you a larger question. How much career do you have left? And do you have other longer term aspirations that you need to start thinking about, because the runway, of course, gets shorter, not longer. And so are you thinking about that, or are you going to wait until you suddenly go, oh my God, I wish I thought about that 10 years ago?
I just did a podcast with a woman named Nora Burchard who wrote a book called Hidden Metrics. And it's really about the metrics that we hide from our bosses. And there are a lot of them. So the idea of the big, hairy, audacious goals of what you really want to achieve. And a lot of those things you don't tell your bosses. So those are things that need to be written down and that you need to improve on, or where you're going towards. And the other thing is a lot of this changes based on life stage, right? I mean, you and I are in a different life stage than we were, I'll be an empty nester this year.
So congratulations.
Yes.
Another phase.
I'm very excited, actually. I'm not terrified. I'm semi-terrified. But that's a different place in space versus mid-career or early career. And so the types of goals that you have, you're also kind of working on that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where I'm really focused on self-actualization, the second mountain, right? And a lot of that means am I spending my time doing things late in my career that are my strengths, that give me energy, and that make me feel fulfilled? And am I also giving back to the next generation, mentoring, that sort of thing? So for me, those are a huge piece of the pie, but that changes based on your life stage, right?
Absolutely. I think you make a really important point there about self-actualization because it is different, right? I mean, you're fresh out of college, you're trying to get a job. I mean, you're trying to join the workforce. You have very different thoughts at that point. What it would mean to have personal agency at that moment and what it would mean to do something fulfilling might just be to have a job where you can learn. It might be that simple. Whereas later, someone might consider introducing greater risk, perhaps much greater risk, for greater reward or better self-actualization. So I can tell you from a personal level that us having this shared past, I was with a corporation for a long time, spent all my career in large corporations, and then 6 years ago got laid off, and that was a huge disruptor, which is a gift, because if you're not doing this career check-ins, this says, yes, you are. You're going to do one right now. And what's good about that is you check where you're at that point, and you realize that you might be ready for some risk you were not ready for. So in my personal case, I was ready for a level of risk and personal investment in my own development that I was never ready for. And I've now reached a certain level of competency and confidence in doing that. And I'm talking about what I do now as a coach, as a performer, as a speaker, doing stand-up comedy or doing speaking, writing, podcasting. These are all self-actualization points that would not have really been realistic or even conceivable 6-8 years ago. So yes, the phase of life I was in was everything. So if you don't keep examining, at least maybe annually, even 2 years, you won't get a chance to see what the new you might be interested in or might consider. Or let me say this too, to bring it into the equation. One thing I encourage my clients to do is take a look at their core values and the priority order of them. Yeah. Because while they're usually semi-permanent, they do change.
Yes.
And so while at one point in your career, stability may be number one, whereas later, adventure starts fighting for that top spot and maybe even knocks stability down a peg, and suddenly you're ready for different kinds of ventures. So yeah, stage of life, hugely important.
Absolutely. Well, this whole idea of planning for potential career disruption, I've always called it always have a plan B. It's simple. And so for me, my dad moved around a lot when I was young, my family, for his work. So I was always the new kid. So I always had to learn how to be adaptable. So during my career, I worked in LA, I worked in San Francisco, I worked in DC, I worked client side, I worked agency side. I've become very adaptable. And then COVID hit. Had to pivot, right? And so I've learned that my superpower is actually all about navigating change and making sure that I am adaptable, anticipating what's next, always having a backup plan, because unexpected things do happen. If you're in advertising and marketing, you will lose your job at least once. More than likely 2 or 3 times, right?
I'm in that camp.
Exactly. Me too. And you need to anticipate that disruption in order to re-steer your career. And you need to have a contingency plan. And so I feel like that idea of always having a plan B, which is also something my father instilled in me. At my wedding, he said, "What's your plan B if the caterer doesn't show up?" I don't have a plan B for that. Mexican? you know? So that's really kind of been droned into me. But it's essentially, the thesis of my entire career. And the reason why I started this podcast, whereby my plan B has become my plan A. And that happens a lot as well, too.
Yeah, plan B can end up being plan A. I mean, take the person who starts some side gig, but then the side gig takes off. It's
Yep.
no longer plan B anymore. I want to draw a juxtaposition there, which may be a little bit of a challenge, but I'd like to challenge you a little bit because I'm just thinking somebody listening or watching, maybe they're wondering in this realm. I think you're absolutely 100% correct and pragmatic and smart to think about a plan B for your wedding. Your dad was right. I mean, for anything, right? A
That's a
plan
little
B.
too far.
Well, I mean, we're not going to say, "Oh, what could go wrong?" You pick the situation, and I'll probably be able to help you with what can go
Yeah.
wrong. So, Plan B is really important because it doesn't leave you scrambling. If it makes you feel prepared. On the other hand, I don't know if you ever heard the saying, but sometimes you'll hear it said, "What usually kills Plan A?" Plan B. Because as long as you have Plan B, which can serve as a net or a fail-safe, Plan A, you can sort of reason with yourself how, well, I don't have to really throw myself to like that. Or if it gets tough or it gets scary, I have Plan B. And so sometimes, depending on where you are in your life stage or career stage or whatever it is, sometimes the very thing that you may want for that stage is to not have a plan B, at least not in a practical sense, like not having a answer if your basement floods. Not always have that plan B, but the kind of plan B that says I'm going to drive towards owning my own business. I'm going to
Yes.
create all the short-term planning, mid-term, and long-term planning I need to do to get there, and then I'm going there. It's not a question of whether I'm going there, a question of whether the business can succeed or fail, but I'm not going to plan B my way out of it. It'll have to fail, and I'll say, okay, failed, try something else. Fail fast, try something else. But so I just wanted to juxtaposition a slightly different idea, which says sometimes there's a time for no net because that's what you need to be all in on some things. Some things just require every fiber of your being to move towards. But that doesn't erase what you're saying. This is just plain smart thinking, Plan B.
I guess I would argue that frequently a plan B is something that you've manifested in your head that may be part of what you truly want to do but never had the guts to do. Like in my case. Otherwise, you'd be doing it. So I think
Well,
it depends. It depends on your plan B, right? And maybe there's a plan B, C, D. What if money were no object? What if I weren't supporting 3 kids in college, all going to enormously expensive private colleges? There's so many different scenarios for you to
yeah,
plan for.
if it serves you to consider these optional plans, right? Let me have options.
Yeah.
And then all we're talking about is being smart that we're not going to pretend that if we go to Atlantic City that we're going to win. We know it. It's
Yes.
definitely going to win. So why even,
Yeah.
just go there and take the rent money so that's stupid. But sometimes when you use this order of priority is what it sounds like to me. When I hear plan A, B, C, D, it sounds like priority, which means I'm going to do everything I can here. And if that doesn't work out, I can move here and then here and here. Whereas what I'm hoping to do with every client, and I'm just putting myself in the coaching spot, I'm hoping to enable every client to go to a safe space where they can answer this question. What do you want to do? What do you wish to do? And I don't want the plan Bs or the fail safes to prevent them wandering over there
Got
to
it.
be able to answer. What do you want to do? Like you're doing this podcast, and I'm just guessing here, wild guess. The main reason for doing it is because you wish to do it. You want to do it. And of course, you have a built-in plan B, C, and D. I'm sure you could turn on anything you want to tomorrow. But you're probably doing this right now out of a sense of expansion from some part of you that has this to give. And it's primary. That's why it's in the lead right now.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm going to be careful to say, don't want to counter this plan B idea at all, because God knows we all do need the plan B and C. And at the same time, we depending on who you are, you're probably not this client, but I have clients that struggle to find the safe space to dream, the safe space to wish. And so sometimes they need to imagine a world where, what if they didn't think about plan B and they only thought about what they want and wish for? Then what would it be that they would want and wish for? So I just want to always make sure that someone can get there to find out what really, remember you said energy?
Yes.
Sometimes they don't even know that there's a ton of energy in that little spot, but they left it back there somewhere a long time ago or wrote it off. Oh, that's crazy. I could never do that. But yeah, maybe they could do that.
What are the warning signs that someone's career is overdue for a checkup?
I like that question because I think it immediately suggests that maybe we could have a checklist, right? Like warning signs you're having a stroke. Sorry, just to keep it light. I like to think of this a little differently. Or maybe it isn't. Maybe it isn't different. Maybe this is a checklist. But some of the warning signs I see are emotional. So one of the places that I think it can show up that it's time to take a look at what you're doing here and whether it's working are emotionally based, meaning if I'm dealing with negative emotions, which may lead to a term like burnout. I don't love that term, but we all know what it means, so it's useful. But if you're sad, if you're angry, if you're scared, not just any scared, but you're anxious, overly anxious, paying attention to what you're feeling, to me, is a good signal just to look at your life and say, what's going on in my life? And is it going, am I running this thing the way I want to? Am I even running it, or is it running me? Am I the dog that's being wagged by the tail?
Yeah.
Or am I the dog wagging the tail? So your emotions. I encourage people to pay attention to what they're feeling, especially in moments when they discuss things that we're discussing. What emotions come up, what feelings. So I'd say that's one thing, is your emotions. Another is cognitive dissonance. Something is just not feeling right. I've had this happen since I deal with people in transition. In fact, it happens often. They come in with this idea in mind, I'm going to move towards this. And then either they find that they have this resistance to the idea, even though they're telling me this is what they want to do, there's a resistance. Or they tell me, this is what I really would like to do. I'm not going to do it, but it's really like to do. And then there's some dissonance about that. It just doesn't sit well that there's, they know they'd love to do that, but when they try to do it, something rubs the wrong way and then they move away from it, they avoid it.
Yeah.
These cognitive dissonance moments, meaning something's not aligning, right? Something's misaligned. There's a bad vibration. It's like music, right? Really dark sounding dissonant chords mean we're putting two things that don't go together well. That's a cognitive signal that there's something there to look at. What two things are not playing together well? Usually that'll trace you to your core values. So because now you're dealing with your intellect and not your feelings. You're dealing with, okay, what are my core values right now? And if you examine those closely and are honest with yourself about them, you're probably going to find the answer to why there's a cognitive dissonance with any direction you might be considering going in. Because probably two core values are at war, they're tied maybe, and you don't know which way to go. Or you've always been taught to lean with this one. But now in your place where you are in your life right now, that's just not as important as it used to be. It was important then, but maybe it isn't now. And that creates that cognitive dissonance.
Does networking and fit into a career checkup? Should you be benchmarking your salary and your market value? Does a career checkup differ depending upon where you are in your career stage? Before we kind of get into the tools that you use in your consulting practice and tools that might be available for everyone else to use.
Yeah, let's take the second one first, which was
your salary and market value.
Your salary, your market value.
Yeah.
So This one is highly dependent first on, again, a cognitive piece, your core values. Because we first have to determine that this is how important is salary, right? Because we don't know unless we're really asking that honest question. It may have been everything before or nothing before, and now it's different. So first that has to be determined. So then I can say, this is really important to me. I'm not making enough money, or I'm just not fulfilling my potential in that department. Or I want to travel in my retirement. I need to build up a stockpile here. So that's now something I can work with. Now I know that it's important and why it's important. Now I can say, I want to maximize my value on the market. Otherwise, if my core value tells me I'm really going for meaning, personal meaning, I want to do something with a nonprofit because that's my driver, aligns with my values. And market value isn't exactly going to help me as much as fit, cultural fit, purpose, mission. So that's why I would put that horse before that cart of values first, considerations for market value second. Networking is an evergreen. I just don't see when there's a time in your career where networking isn't a good idea. Because let's reduce networking to something more life basic, community.
Yeah.
We need community, right? Let's go back to Maslow's hierarchy. Like, we want to belong. So whether we want to belong in career circles, professional circles, I want to be joining an AI group right now so I can be learning and I can be teaching and we can all be learning together. Or I don't want to become isolated later in my career because that's what tends to happen mid-career. I'm sure I'm older than you are, but the older career you get, the more you can isolate. And the more you isolate, the more difficult you're likely to make your life, and no matter how you look at it. So networking to me is an evergreen. It means staying connected with the connections that would matter to you at any given phase, which, at some level they might be companionship based, at others they might be professional based. Let me surround myself with people who challenge me because they're better, smarter, and further ahead than I am. Or no, I want community. I want shared ideas. Or I want to teach. 3 different phases you could be in. So that's how I would look at both of those.
All right. Well, in your consulting practice, you have a lot of tools that you use to help people with their career checkups. Can you kind of go through some of those tools and how they work? And are there any tools that you would point out to people that are available online for free or low cost that you might recommend for people to use to do their own career checkup?
Absolutely. I use these 2 websites that I just found, and they're excellent for doing a self-driven core values exercise of identifying your core values. They give you a big, large sample that you could choose from, and that'll give you ideas for other core values. And you could do a core values exercise for free by just doing something online. You don't have to buy a thing. So I'm always looking for those for my clients because I don't want them to have to invest in something if they don't need it. Yeah. So I would always say take your core question or inquiry and go either AI, go ChatGPT, or I like Claude. Yeah. And let's see what that'll offer. And of course, always use your big old grain of salt with whatever you get from AI and the internet. But there's plenty of free tools out there, especially including AI, to examine what it means to be purpose-driven. You don't have to pay anybody for that necessarily. You can pay a coach, you could pay me. But before you do that, maybe investigate what you can achieve on your own. I like to use Myers-Briggs, although Myers-Briggs has, I guess I'll just say this. We can decide if it stays or not later. You'll decide. But Myers-Briggs, I'm certified in it. I really like it. I really like how it works. I think it's terribly misunderstood. It's never been applied correctly in my career. It's based on Carl Jung's theory about how we're born with preferences, not traits, not skills or strengths, preferences. So we either prefer introversion, we prefer extroversion. And then so even those that teach that correctly and do the assessment and then help interpret it, then miss what the latter piece, stage 2 of the MBTI assessment is. How have you work this out in the world. The way you have certain preferences, you prefer introversion over extroversion or the other way around. How have you worked that out in the world? Meaning, how have you worked with the one you prefer, and how have you developed the one you don't prefer? Because you probably need that one. Self-actualization would mean developing all your opposite preferences, right? I don't prefer that, but I'd like to be good at it. I prefer to make my decisions based on people. I'm driven that way versus analysis on data. But it would really be great if I could do both. Just like if I could write with both hands would be a wonderful advantage. So I love that tool. I think it's very misused and underutilized, but if I use it, that's how I use it. I have two others that I'm going to tell you. These are more coaching tools, but these are the things that I use every day. I use cognitive behavioral coaching, very simplistic, even though it may sound like not simplistic, but it's simply examining. I created a word. Yes. And this is where I'm at in my.
I'll add it to the dictionary.
Yeah, I'm actually creating my own words now. Cognitive behavioral coaching is based on cognitive behavioral therapy. You're looking at how you're interpreting activating events in your life and career. So something happens that you consider innocuous initially, meaningless, until you give it meaning, and then you have a resulting feeling or emotion from that. And it allows you to go back into that column where you gave it meaning to decide if you gave it meaning with some data that would back up the meaning you gave it, or did you just react and decide that person stepped on my toe purposefully? I know they did, right? Versus maybe they didn't, and that could change everything.
Yeah.
So this cognitive behavioral work I do, there's a fantastic tool that is out there and available. I'd encourage people to read the book before they use it. The book is called Immunity to Change. I don't know if you ever heard of that.
I have not.
The authors are Kagan and Leahy. They, from the book Immunity to Change, describe that people can build up an immunity to changing. And it's self-preservation, it's self-protection. Generally speaking, we don't want to change. So we build up clever mechanisms to hide ourselves or protect ourselves from changing. So what we may do is we may really want consciously to change something in our life or in our career, but we will have some competing desire to do something else because we were taught that. I'm going to give you a powerful example from the book. They describe this woman who wants to become more physically fit. She feels she's not physically fit. She wants to get more physically fit. And yet everything she does in her life works counter to it. No matter how hard she tries, no matter how convinced she is cognitively this is a good idea, her behavior constantly moves against it. And then through this path of discovery called the immunity map, which is a 5-step process that this book takes you through, and this is how I take my clients through, you discover that at the tail end of all your thinking around this, what I wish I would do and what I seem to be doing instead, are these assumptions that you have. And the assumptions have never been challenged. So her assumption was, and she was not aware of it consciously, if I do become very physically fit, I'm going to attract people. And that scares me because I had some bad experiences. So therefore, no matter how much I wish I would do this, I'm probably not going to because something else is operating to keep me from doing it that's really powerful and I'm not aware of it. So becoming aware of it allows you to make a conscious decision. Oh, if I can see I'm doing that, I could choose whether I want to continue doing it or not. You can't change what you can't see. Awareness brings change. That's something I like to live by. That's a thing she could not change without that level of awareness. So I love that tool or anything like it. So those are main tools that I use.
There's a variety of tools that I've used, and I've talked to so many different coaches, and I read so many different books from different coaches, and so I utilize all those resources. But I'm also a huge fan of any sort of workbook. So I will pick up whatever workbook that helps me plan for the next 90 days. The one I just picked up that I love, it's from Akosia, and it has like a personal manifesto. It has your 2026 goals, and it's bound. It has a goal setting planner, your action plan, and your weekly schedule. But I love the personal manifesto, your vision board,
Mm.
and how to brainstorm for the vision board. And so a lot of these things are resources are out there. They make them fun. You can do them in coloring. I'm a hard copy girl. I need to be able to do it. But I also think that a lot of people like to be able to do things digitally. And I'm going to give you an example. For fitness, we all track things for our fitness, right?
Mhm.
And so I have on my phone, if you can see, a fitness tracker.
Mhm.
That's going to show. And when you click on the fitness tracker, I can go in and it will show the various goals that I have every day. So, to a certain amount of hours of sleep, yoga, walking, working out, doing meditation, reading a book. And I track that on a daily basis. Why don't we do that for our career goals? Where it's front and center and you can see it right here on your iPhone. So, again, goes back to your premise of we're tracking our body. Are we tracking our careers?
I love it. You should just drop the mic right there. Totally. Why don't we do that for our career goals? Are our careers not worth it?
Yeah.
Would it not be good to do that? I don't have anything else to say. Let's do that. Do that, America. However you can do it. Create
All
the
right.
app. Build the app. Have somebody build you the app.
Yeah.
I do have some things in mind that I am working on. Something in particular. It is in the realm we're talking about in terms of an app. But you're right on it. Like, why are we not paying attention to this?
Yeah.
Our career needs our attention, as does every other area of our life. But let's be intentional and track.
Well, I want to ask you one last question, which is you've worked with hundreds of really more executives and teams, right? And in
Mhm.
terms of your coaching practice, what are the biggest challenges that you see out there, the top one, two, or three that people are having with regards to their career, maintaining their career, tracking their career, transitions, that sort of thing?
I'll give you the top two. They just popped right into my head. Number one, fear.
Yeah.
Right, and we could talk more about each one if you want. But number one is fear. Number two is limiting beliefs, which are closely related. So take this basic premise. People move towards pleasure and away from pain. There's something we can count on. And fear is really uncomfortable, which means pain. So we'll do anything to move away from what scares us
Yeah.
because it implies pain. So that's the number one thing that we're all dealing with that might be keeping us from what we could be doing right now. When you get to your elder years and you're in a rocking chair somewhere, let's presume, and you're rocking along thinking about your past, this your whole life, it will be these things. It will be the things that fear stopped you from doing or being or approaching that you will wish you could go after again with either facing the fear, and then pretty much that. 'Cause you can't get rid of fear. You have to face it.
Yeah.
You can't go around it. You have to just face it and then do. So number one, fear. Second, limiting beliefs, because unfortunately, this is a nature nurture question, and wherever we might land on nature nurture in terms of how a person develops, we end up as human beings, all of us, with a certain amount of limiting beliefs that I would suggest are about nurture, meaning we weren't born with so many limiting beliefs as we were given things that caused limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
So we kind of think, well, I could never do that. You remember earlier you said something, what's a signal that it's time to take a look at a career checkup? Here's number three. Maybe I should make this number one. If you're fixating on what other people are doing and it's getting under your skin, that's not, the problem isn't what they're doing. It's what you're not doing.
Yeah.
And you will find satisfaction if you start doing what you want to do. And you won't care what they're doing. But when you care what they're doing and it's bothering you, it isn't because of what they're doing. You don't need to be doing what they're doing or be famous or any of the things that they might be doing. It's that you're not fulfilling what you could possibly do, whether either because of limiting beliefs or fear. That's a signal that it's time for a career check-in, that you're fixating on the other grass being greener.
Very helpful. And I think you've given a lot of good resources for people to think about in this podcast. So I appreciate your time today, Wes. We will provide links to your podcast as well as all of the resources that we talked about here and your website. You can listen or watch this episode on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube, or on marketingmoms.com. Don't forget to subscribe and share, and thanks for joining.
Thank you so much, Kelly. This was an unusual interview. Thank you so much for a really just energetic, inspiring interview that you just did. Like, that inspired me. So thank you.
I appreciate that so much. Talk soon.